Welcome to Touchline Talk, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes into the minds of soccer's managers, club leaders, administrators, and coaching experts that offer deep insights into the game's tactical and operational side. And today with me is the legendary George Perry, and I mean that with all sincerity. George was in the Hall of Fame class of Indiana soccer in 2017. George's biography, it's very long, and so I'm going to miss some things here, George, but you'll fill in the gaps. George played at Indiana University, was team captain for 3 years, 1976 NCAA Division I National Championship. They played in that game. We came up a little short in that one, didn't we, George?
A little short.
Was at the Indianapolis Daredevils, which was the American Soccer League, professional level. About what time or years were those, George?
That would have been 77, 78.
77, 78. So right after you got done at IU. Was assistant coach at IU men's soccer, head coach for Indiana University Women's Soccer Club, head coach at the University of Rochester for the men's side, head coach at St. Bonaventure University for the men's side as well, New York West Boys State Olympic Development Coach, state coach for Indiana Youth Soccer Association, was a lifelong educator as well. Education's been a huge part of it. Head coached at Wabash for the men's side, which is only the men's side at Wabash, if you know that.
Only option.
Boys and Girls Club youth soccer instructor and coordinator of the U16 program in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Indiana Boys State Olympic Development Coach, head coach at Rockford College men's soccer, director of intramurals and instructor in phys ed. YMCA youth soccer coordinator in Monmouth. Is that how you say that? Monmouth,
correct.
Illinois?
Monmouth.
And Indiana Soccer Association commissioner of the Indiana Soccer League, or ISL. Region 1 representative to the NSCAA Board of Directors, which is now known as United Soccer Coaches, is what people would know that as now.
Correct.
Chair of the NSCAA Jerry Yeagley Award for Exceptional Personal Achievement, which I know probably means even something a little more to you with that name on it and your relationship to Coach Yeagley.
Very special.
And then the NSCAA Board of Directors Executive Committee member, served as the NSCAA President and the NSCAA Senior National Staff Instructor, and currently he's done it all. And from the playing side, the coaching side, the administrative side of the game, and is now serving for Indiana Soccer as the director of competition. How long have you been doing that, George?
Almost 14 years now.
14 years now. So people like me who coach in the state of Indiana get to benefit from all of the labor and organization that George has put together. And so, George, before we get even more into your story, I always like to start with an icebreaker. And I always think these insights are interesting. If there's one rule that you could change in soccer at any level, maybe it's something in the youth club side, professional level, what would it be?
That's a great question. I would have to...
And we want to thank our new affiliate partner, Total Football Analysis. Discover in-depth football analysis tactics and scouting reports at Total Football Analysis. Stay ahead with expert insights and data-driven articles. So go to totalfootballanalysis.com, discount code SCS30 to get 30% off any purchase or subscriptions. You can check that referral link as well in the show notes. That's Total Football Analysis, 30% off any purchase or subscription with the discount code SCS30 to get that 30% off.
I wish that we were playing smaller numbers older than we are right now. I wasn't a fan of when U.S. Soccer added a player to the field in the sevens or the seven-a-side, which was 6v6.
Yep.
And now they're at 9v9. It was 8v8.
Yep.
I would like to see small-sided soccer stay all the way maybe up through 13s even, maybe even 14s.
Yeah. What in the global landscape? What is that? I know it's always changing a little bit. Is there any insights on what's going on in other places in the world in that?
I think other countries are going that way.
Yeah.
I know Belgium. I was over when I was over for the World Cup back in the year that I was president of the NSCAA. I was fortunate to take a tour of Europe during the World Cup with a group of coaches. And when we were in Belgium, the 6 and unders play 2v2.
Wow.
And you're starting to see that happen with more of the federations over in Europe, that they keep it smaller because it's more about the player and the ball, especially at the younger ages. I've also always wanted to see if there was a way of having a telescoping crossbar that could go up and down based on the age group that you play on. I'm a firm believer a 24-foot wide goal is good, because then players learn to find the corners when they're trying to score. Goalkeepers learn to come off their angle. But there's nothing more frustrating to see a 13-year-old who's playing on an 8-foot-high crossbar, who's maybe only 5 foot.
Right.
5'2".
Yeah, and a little chip shot can give him trouble.
Yeah, and people are just telling them, shoot high, shoot high. Well, that's not really going to teach the shooters how to really finish properly in a real game. That's
good, George.
And who knows how tall that person will be.
Yeah.
I know you're having Vince Gansberg on another day.
Yeah.
And his son, Zach, was kind of a short guy growing up, and now I look up to him. And he was an All-American soccer player in college, and an excellent college coach now. So you never know what's going to happen down the road.
That's good. That's the first time I've heard that one. I think that's, we are seeing, and a recent conversation we had with Kyle Wilson, his residency is a lot of 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. At the club I'm coaching at, we're doing a lot of that at the younger ages, even having these little 2v2 festivals and things like that, because, everyone's like, well, kick it. Everyone wants to see the big kick, the big shot, all those things. No, you got to guess what goes with them throughout. Their ability to be on the ball, their confidence on the ball, and their frequency of touches. When you're playing 1v1, 2v2, you get a chance to go again very quickly, right? And try it again.
Well, it's like when I work with young players, I'll often start out, because they usually don't know me because I'm not with them all the time. In my role, I can't really coach one team, but I can go around and do some things. But I'll always say, if this is going to work out today, there's going to be 3 rules we have to follow, okay? And the first one was, when I'm talking, you have to listen to me. When you raise your hand and I call on you, I promise I will listen to you. And the third one is, you're not allowed to kick the soccer ball. And so I get crazy stares and questions and all this stuff, but where I'm guiding to is, what do I want them to do? I want them to be able to dribble. I want them to be able to pass. I want them to be able to shoot. So I want it to be constructive.
Yes. People
that yell, kick it, send it, boot it, all that kind of stuff is not what the real game is about.
Yes, absolutely. It's good. It's good, George. George, how'd you first get involved in soccer? I know that was a while ago now, right?
While ago.
And soccer has obviously had a huge formation on your life, right? Lifelong in the game at some level, various levels. How'd you first get involved with the game, George?
Well, my family moved around a lot. My dad worked for a company that moved him around, and when I was entering 5th grade, we found ourselves in Chicago, in a north suburb. Met in Chicago, north of Chicago, there, and so I started playing soccer in the school, in the middle school, 5th grade at that time, and played for the Wilmette Park District. You didn't have club soccer in those days. You kind of played, at least in Chicago. Excuse me. You played for your park district and stuff like that, and so I just started playing for the middle school team and then the summer park district team.
That's awesome. What is, as we look back, and obviously, plot twist, spoiler alert, George ended up playing at IU. He's coached at IU, coached at other programs, all kinds of level, college side, school side, club side, all the things. What's one of your favorite memories, though, from your playing or your coaching days? Something that just really stayed with you, man.
There's really a couple of them, I would say, that are real special. I think what really helped me get to the playing level that I was able to play at in my days, which, again, nowadays I don't think I could play at Division I schools. I wasn't the athlete that they have now, way different. But through my park district coach, and he was one of my sophomore high school coach, who's a Ukrainian. He got me hooked up with the Ukrainian soccer club in the city of Chicago. So I'm 15 and 16-year-olds playing in a men's league. And I probably trained with them for a year and a half, 2 years before I even got on the field for a game. But I was still able to play with my park district, and I still went down and did that. Wow. And being able to play with those guys was incredible. And actually, I actually went to a school at University of Alabama, Huntsville, before I went to IU.
I didn't know that, George.
Yeah, he was a Ukrainian coach. He scoured the Ukrainian leagues in Chicago and New York. So he recruited me and another friend of mine, and we went down there on a full scholarship, but just wasn't the right fit for me. Yeah. So I came home and eventually, found my way through a teammate who was going to go to IU. IU had just turned varsity. So I went down there, but I couldn't play at IU my first year. So The club team offered me a round trip bus fare to come home on the weekends to play for them on the Sunday afternoon games. And so since there was no bus coming home on Sunday nights from Chicago to Bloomington, but I could catch a flight from Midway to Bloomington, I hitchhiked home every Friday to do it. And believe it or not, I did it like 9 weekends in a row. And as long as I got to 465 and 37 at the right time, the same businessman or salesman picked me up every single time and basically dropped me off at the highway ramp, which was about 3 blocks from my house. So
unreal.
It was amazing. But
George.
But playing with that team was phenomenal. I actually looked it up in Wikipedia, and seven of the players I played with had actually capped for the U.S. national team at one point. And that was when national team caps were way different. They called you in for a game. You showed up on Saturday. You probably played on Sunday, and then you went back home. So it wasn't like the training camps and all that stuff that they have now. At the convention this year, there was the Walt Chiszewicz Award, which went to Willie Roy, who's a longtime Chicago Sting coach, and I played with him as well. And some of the teammates that he had was there. One of the guys, at first, I went up and introduced myself because, it's been at least almost 50 years since I've seen this guy or he's seen me. And he kind of acknowledged me and said, "Yeah, how you doing? Good, good, good." And then about 5 minutes later, he turns around, "You're that American kid, aren't you?" So my years at Indiana, it's such a family when you go through the IU, soccer program, men's or women's, but particularly the men's, which is what I know the best. Yeah. The Yeagley family and then all of my friends. I mean, all my best friends for the most part come either from my high school soccer or the IU soccer program and stuff like that. And it's cool. Going back there in the summers to work camps and just seeing people over and over again is just it's worth more than words can say.
Yeah, and I think that's such a thing that often gets glossed over in the landscape of sport today is how formative and transformative these relationships are. It creates a sandbox of struggle, success, challenge, but to be shoulder to shoulder with your teammates, with your coaches, and then those opportunities to stay connected. It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah. George, I have some ideas on this, but maybe there'll be some surprises. Who were some of your biggest influences in soccer as you were growing up or even into your coaching career?
Well, I've got to walk a little bit outside of soccer, I think, as far as I label it of really having 4 main mentors. And then certainly a lot of influential people in my life. But my mother was my first one, and I don't think I knew this at the time, but my mom was a professional tap dancer, and she owned a tap dancing studio. And observing her and watching her, how she worked with 3-year-olds all the way to 83-year-olds in her classes, just seeing how she taught and interacted with children, with adults, was really influential. Another great reason, having been at IU, was I met my wife there, and my wife's an early childhood teacher, and we've had daycare homes within our home, and she works other places, early childhood. And again, learning the right way to communicate with young kids and things like that. You have a young child and you have to go to the store to pick up something. You don't ask the child, "Do you want to come with me?" Because you can't go and leave them at home. Yeah. So you say, "We're going to the store. Do you want to push the cart or do you want to ride in the cart?"
Here's the new 2 options.
Give them an option that you can live with and live with it, whichever one they pick. And then Ihor Katinsky, which is that Ukrainian crazy man that got me hooked in this game in Park District and at New Trier West and things like that. And then certainly Jerry Yeagley, who brought me to IU and has been a lifelong friend. And will always be that way.
Yeah, that's special. That's good. George, talk to me about your current role, as the director of competition, and share your journey on what that's been like over the last 14 years, things that have come to be, changes within that. I know obviously there's always some big announcement coming from, the United Soccer, Soccer Federation. There's things coming down through club soccer, youth soccer, USY. Like there's always something coming. What have been some of the cool, exciting things? What have been some of the changes and challenges over the years in that role?
It actually started before the 14 years, because when I was coaching at Wabash College, Don Rawson was the executive director for Indiana Soccer Association, and he's a past player, club player, and assistant coach at IU. So I've known Donnie for a long, long time. And he called me up and said, I'm looking to try to start, kind of a statewide league in Indiana. And so we met at a McDonald's in Lebanon at least a half a dozen times there, and we're talking about it, and pretty much kind of established the premier and the first division levels. We didn't have the lower levels because there were still all the regional leagues around the state. And so we put that piece together, and he wanted to know if I wanted to be the commissioner. He said yes, but it couldn't be a full-time job because they just didn't have the resources.
Right.
And there weren't enough teams, because that was going to maybe be 150, 200 teams, something like that. So fortunately, there was an incredible administrator, and she boasts that she doesn't know anything about soccer or the rules of soccer, but Angel Hall has been a significant person in all this stuff being started. And she was actually the commissioner for the first number of years. And as always, recognizing her strengths and what she doesn't do well, she created a coaching committee that could actually make the soccer decisions or recommendations, I should say, and decisions, I guess, at times when it needed to be. But then eventually, I guess, a lot of the volunteer leagues around the state, that it was growing so much, their volunteerism couldn't really support the programs, came to the state and said, can you take this over? By bringing in all those teams, then they were able to make it a full-time position. And I believe Dave Guthrie, I think was Dave Guthrie. Donnie had left, and Dave Guthrie is now the executive director. And then Steve Franklin, who was director of coaching education, met with a lot of the DOCs from around the state, and they were talking about the direction they wanted to see things going. And we always try to remember that we're a member club organization. We don't run the state. The state runs the state. The clubs run the state. We just help facilitate and practice and put into place what they want. But somehow my name came up as someone who could maybe administrate as well as had a coaching background and stuff like that. And so I met with Dave, and here's where I am in the position. So it's been very interesting. It was a different role for me, for sure. I try to get out as much as I can to the clubs and try to, find out what I'm doing. Steve helps me do that because I get to participate in a lot of the coaching education programs that he does. Todd Shealy helps me, letting me get on the field with ODP training so I can at least, take care of that craving that I have and all those things. But, for the most part, it's just trying to represent the game as best I possibly can. I have some recommendations. Some of them they've accepted. Some of them they've shot out of the water and said no, and I'm okay with that. I never take things like that personal. That I think that's one trait I have that is a pretty good one. We might disagree on something, but that doesn't mean that you and I still can't go out and have a pizza and soda afterwards and have a good time doing that. So that's always been part of it that's going on. But especially what we do in the small-sided game is really important to me because it's such the formative years, the 9, 10, 11, 12. There's so many things that we need to do to help, make the game better for the players. And it's such a time where they can learn so much, and they can do so many more things than we give them credit for.
Yes.
Sometimes if we let them go and be creative and be imaginative and try things and never look at it as a mistake, but look at it as a challenge. Yeah.
That's good.
And eventually you'll identify what you're good at and what you're not good at. My coaches were pretty good because I wasn't fast, so they always had fast guys around me to make up for the things I couldn't do.
Yes.
And that's what good coaching does.
Yeah.
And you put the pieces together, especially when you're at that competitive level. Now, when you're still at the developmental level, and that's the hard part. You talked about what would I like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing standings go away for 11 and 12-year-olds that we just, I do believe you try to find the right level of competition so that games are fairly even. Doesn't do anybody good to have a 10-0 game. Doesn't help either team in that situation. But we put, winning is good, but kids are competitive. We don't have to instill that in them, really. We just have to create the environment so that they can just let that go.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to try to we try to drive that one too much instead of letting the kids handle that part of it.
Yeah, and there is this sense at times where your kid at 8, 9, 10 years old might be on the edge of the second team or the first team, or on the edge between the third and the fourth team now, or whatever it might be. But the one strength and skill, if they're really good with the ball, when they catch up physically, athletically, when the tactics kind of get, in and around, you can see those leaps and those jumps for those kids that got the basics right, that took a developmental approach as a family, that took the developmental approach with a club. And there is a lot of, people wondering this question, what environment that's one of the biggest things as a parent that we're thinking about is, where's an environment where my kid can thrive, and helping them define that appropriately. Because sometimes they just define it as, hey, are they winning a bunch of games at this top level and yada, yada, yada. But, that holistic nature. And so, George, what has, especially, going from being somebody who worked with, college athletes, now down over your career down to working with young kids and everything in between, how has your coaching or your leadership style, whether inside or outside of soccer, maybe changed over time with all of that in mind?
Well, again, I've been very fortunate with the places I've been, and people kid me. I mean, and they're probably right. I couldn't hold a job for 6 years. No coaching job, college job that I have for longer than 6 years. So we were moving around a lot. And for some reason, my wife kept coming with me. But I'm very fortunate with that. But the nice part, especially at the programs that I coached at, were small communities. So at least every spring, I was able to kind of direct their youth program for those communities. Now, they're usually boys and girls clubs or YMCAs, something like that. They weren't travel leagues like what we have here, and all that, and those types of situations. So that's why I always felt really comfortable doing the NSCAA youth diplomas, because I'm not just there, telling them something you can read in a book. I'm saying, this is what I've experienced.
Yeah.
I do this.
Yeah.
I coach where you guys are coaching right now.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm some guy standing up on a pedestal trying to say it without having any idea, which we unfortunately tend to see happen too much, and not just in sports, but in a lot of things. Yeah. So I always felt I think I was believable when I did those things, because I could cite my experiences with that. And again, I cite my mother and my wife, because just their personalities and the way they were demanding, they were structured, but they were very much listening to the child, letting the child do, kind of do at their own pace and things along those lines. So I really learned a lot from them in that type of situation. So, I was very fortunate with that. But, I think I have humor when I coach.
I can attest to that. I've been on a coaching course with you. I can attest to that.
I don't try to tell the jokes like Steve Franklin does, but I can't tell jokes. But I think I'm humorous in the way I tell stories and stuff like that, and share some things and have some experiences that we can go by. And I don't mind making fun of myself or even anybody else making fun of me. Yeah. I can handle all that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably one of my better features, I guess, if you call me a leader. Yeah. I don't know. But I just think that's so important. If we think too much of ourselves, it doesn't connect with people.
It's good. George, you've seen a lot of the different sides of soccer as a coach, as a parent, as an administrator. What do you see as one of the biggest challenges and opportunities in youth soccer development today?
Instilling the love of the game for the players, so that the players take the lead and not the adults take the lead. When I do coaching education classes, I try to distinguish between training and practice. I believe players train with a coach and they practice on their own. And if a player loves what they're doing, they're going to go to the backyard, they're going to go in the basement, they're going to go in the garage and do some things because they just enjoy the game so much, whether it's, for the most part in Indiana, it was kids taking a ball out and shooting a hoop, at one age or another, no matter what it was. And you modified that and you go from there. But to see that happen, can we give players challenges? can give them to work, especially at the younger ages. I used to be one of those people that, wasn't sure if I really liked having parents around or not. But as I've gotten older and I've been this long enough, I said, first of all, how are the kids going to get to training unless the parents take them there? And can we give parents something to do with their child?
Yeah.
So it's becomes a family experience. I can remember years ago when I was a college coach and I went to watch a player indoor, and there was a sign up for this, Little Tykes soccer program, and I don't know if that's the right name or not, but it was supposedly for like 3 and 4 year olds, and I'm thinking, what the heck kind of a soccer program are you doing with 3 and 4 year olds? Well, when I went up there, because I was there early, then the player that I was going to watch was playing the game. So I went over and just sat and watched this thing. And it was kind of like an obstacle course where kids crawled under things, they crawled around things. There was a ball here, but they couldn't do it unless they had a significant other with them. It could be a older brother, sister, grandparent, a parent, whoever was available. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is good because now they're kind of giving these people something they can do with that child at home.
Yes.
And every once in a while they dribble the ball a little bit and they'd shoot in a goal, but not all the things. It was more about coordination and, that type of stuff. And I thought, this is good. And especially when this isn't just a drop off and leave a kid and be gone for an hour or whatever it is. They actually, were teaching people how to interact. And that kind of changed my whole look at what I try to do with youth soccer, and can we find ways to include the families and
That's
not
good.
and obviously there's some kids that just they're single parents, they're working 2 jobs, some things are very difficult. It may not be the mom or the dad or somebody else, and it's very challenging for all that kind of stuff. So not everybody has that, but that just was an eye opener to me, and I hadn't really hadn't clicked with me before until I saw that.
That's cool. That's really good. What advice would you give to somebody who maybe wants to get into coaching or has found themselves getting into, whether it's a rec program or travel program or whatever it might be, that's found themselves, coaching, or on that, club administration side, some sort of path? I think a lot of times think that everybody just has this, like, if I just take these steps and jump on these lily pads, then there's a straight linear path to do this, and that. What advice would you give to somebody that's kind of getting into, volunteering, or maybe they're getting paid a little bit as a travel coach or whatever, and just kind of starting out? What advice would you give them?
Try to surround yourself with as many good people as you can, and don't be so proudful that you can't ask for help, or you may do some things. When I was at the University of Rochester, the women's basketball coach preseason always brought in another college coach to work sometimes with their team. And I thought at first, and then again, this is my first head coaching position, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience at things. I'm thinking, how can she do that? How is she bringing? Isn't she good enough to do this herself? And then after a couple of years of kind of watching this and doing some things, I realized she's actually got it best. She is so confident in what she does. She's not fearful, or intimidated by somebody else helping her players out as well. And I found that to be a very interesting piece of how to expose them with different people and things like that. But as far as, getting into the business, so to speak, again, it's just, putting your hand up and saying, yeah, I'll work with my 6-year-old's team. You don't have to be a soccer player to work with 6-year-olds. If you give them all a soccer ball, and there's plenty of resources, whether it's coaching education classes, whether there's online videos, all these things. There's so much information that can give you stuff, but it's really about personality, caring for the child, making them feel special. And we can all do that. We hopefully do that with our own children, let alone, with other people along those lines. Understanding that there are roles and responsibilities that don't even have to be about coaching. With managers are extremely helpful. I know as a head coach, I never had a full-time paid assistant coach at any of my positions. I had some assistant coaches that were just incredible, were always there. But the athletic trainer sometimes served as that other adult that the kids, that the players could go to when they had issues. And that is where it's nice having a manager or somebody else that's involved with that, getting parents involved with how they can support, what constructive things can they do to help the player, the program out. So there's always got to be ways of getting people in, and there's always a space. I mean, every club needs help. I don't care if it's a full professional club or if it's a completely volunteer club. And it's amazing. I think we have well over 120 clubs in Indiana Soccer Association. Over half of them are recreation programs, completely volunteer based. There's people, but they're spending full time in those positions. The way they work at things, but they do it for the love of kids. They do it for the love of community because I think they try to develop that community feel, whether it's from a rural community or here in Indianapolis, just within that club, things like that. So there's always a place, and sometimes you can just go to people and say, here's what I think I'm good at. Is there any way I can help you out?
Absolutely. That's good. I love that. And I think that's a good reminder too of, obviously American soccer culture is very different than any other soccer culture in the world. But I think that's where there's opportunity, for it to become our thing, and not just this player's thing or the paid staff. Like, this is our thing, our community together. And there's some transformative type of relationships with other parents, with assistant coaches, with people who want to do snack, with people who want to do some of the logistics and administrative side or whatever that can really, one, it's needed.
Right.
And two, it makes a huge relational impact for everybody else out there, for sure. George, what was maybe one of those aha moments for you? I think we talked about it a little bit. But any other aha moments that changed how you think about coaching or the game in general over the years?
Yeah, I think it was when I was at IU, and Don Rawson was kind of helping run the Boys and Girls Club soccer program, and he got a lot of our players doing that. And we used to do clinics in all the schools to try to promote coming to the IU soccer games. Yep. We stuffed papers underneath dorm doors to get people to come out to our games and stuff like that. But when we would work with the young kids at the Boys and Girls Club program, that was when I've definitely decided that this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And I still wanted to try to play, and I did try, and I played a few years professional, but wasn't good enough to make a living after it. But I had already decided that coaching was where I wanted to go. I think that's why I was an 8-year undergrad at IU, because I kept changing majors, and then I finally switched over to physical education and got things done. And I think my wife had a lot to do with that too. But still, it was working with and it was an 8 and under program that we worked with, and we actually implemented the silent Saturday programs where no one could talk, or couldn't cheer. They could clap, but no direction to players during certain quarters of the game. And I just said, okay, this is something I think I could have a little bit of an influence to. And then when I took my national youth license from Tom Fleck and Ron Quinn and David Carr and a couple of others, which was like the second class I think they even offered, it was an eye-opener working with. They actually brought out 5- and 6-year-old kids, and it's when I realized that I guess I'm pretty big compared to a 6-year-old. And how do I, what do I have to model? First time I've ever seen myself videoed, recorded, working with young kids. And that was a tremendous eye opener in terms of how do I, change my voice, in terms of how loud or soft I am. Do I kneel down as opposed to standing up, depending on how close I am to kids and stuff like that. So those types of things have been very impactful on me, and stories I try to share with other coaches, because it still amazes me with all the video technology that we have these days, how many coaches have never seen themselves coach.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. George, if you could spotlight any type of resource or tool for people who are getting involved with coaching, whether it's a training tool or coaching guide or drills or recommendations of any sort, what would you encourage people with?
Well, they're all over the place, but I've got to say Steve Franklin has done a tremendous job on the Indiana Soccer website, soccerindiana.org, in the education department. He has training sessions for every group for an entire season that are there. So you don't even really have to come up with the activities. You still have to learn how to coach the activities. Correct. Or how to impact your knowledge and help the child within that situation. But if people are scared of what do I use, well, that's one source, and there are many others. If you Google anything, there's so many of them that are out there that can help you with that. So you can eliminate that fear that some people might have if they're, you happen to be gone from that team meeting, and so you got voted the coach, or you get that phone call saying, well, if we don't get a volunteer coach, then your child's not going to have a place to play this season because we just don't have any coaches. And unfortunately, that's still the way it goes. Fortunately, more and more coaches that are coming in have played the game. I mean, when I grew up, my parents didn't know anything about the game of soccer before I started playing it, and never did. And then then followed me and learned a lot about it and stuff like that. My wife never knew anything about soccer before we met, and now I find her to be very knowledgeable of what's going on and with all that's going to happen. So we now have a group that are more knowledgeable. That can be good and that can be bad. When we always go by, here's how it was when I played, or this and that. But still, I think that's it. But I think Steve's done just an incredible job, with the support of our office staff and the support of our board, just being able to provide this information for people. Indiana is the only state that I'm aware of that provides coaching education basically for free for our member coaches, because of the way we do through player registration and all those kinds of things. Now, I think when you're doing the stuff that are tied in with the federation, they have to pay still the $25 learning center fee. But that's pretty nominal compared to what some things can be.
Absolutely.
And Steve and Dave and our board have all agreed also when we host C licenses that we're not doing it to make money off of it. So our prices are usually better than anybody else's because Steve finds a way to make it work. So, he's been a tremendous source for people in the state.
Absolutely. And anybody, regardless of where you can live, can access some of those free downloads. I mean, they're everywhere on the site. And for some, and you may have, like my journey was coaching high school right out of the gate. And so then learning the priorities, like you said, of getting down at the level of a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, the principles that you give to them. I'm telling you, you're probably overcooking it with your college and high school, sessions too, simplifying a principle, baking that principle. And then you create kind of your repertoire of what the kids know. How do you expand off of that? All of those things. And a lot of that is just right there on the Indiana Soccer website. Could you give that website to us again?
Yes, it's www.soccerindiana.org, and you just look for education or coaching education up on one of the tabs up on top, and it can drop down to right there. And and the fun part about it is I love when I set up activities for players, and kind of they either take me to the next step, like because they've maybe found a different way to do something. And even though it's not the way I have written out on my lesson plan, I'm going, okay, there's the next stage. There's the way we're making it more difficult, or they just find a better way to do it sometimes. And it may not be the same for player A and for player B. And that's the other thing we always have to remember. We got to find ways that we can still give good information to this player, but also help this player out as well. And that's experience. That's just experience. And so you can't let it stop you, but it'll come.
Absolutely. George, in our last question, this has been such a great conversation. I know it's helping so many people that are listening to this. If you could manage or play for any team in history, who would it be and why?
Well, I can't include Indiana since I've already done that. Because when people ask me my favorite team, it is Indiana University men's soccer. But I would have to say, and again, I don't have a favorite team, but if I did at one time, it was Manchester United with Alex Ferguson as the manager, and Renee Muhlenstein as the kind of the trainer for the team. But Scholes and Giggs were two players that I just absolutely loved watching play. I wish I could have done it in person, but at least what I was able to see on TV and all this kind of stuff, and just to be able to be exposed to something like that. And the time would have actually been, I would have liked to seen them play or hear them play during the pandemic when they didn't have anybody in the stands. And if you watched any of the Premier League or any of the games from any country in those days during the pandemic, you could actually hear the players talking on the field because you couldn't during a game because the fans are making all this. And to just hear how much direction and all this kind of stuff is given was pretty neat. I would have loved to have been able to be in a position to hear what they say. I think they were somewhat verbal leaders, but they were certainly leaders by their action, their play. So that would be,
I love that.
Be probably
That's good. That's good, George. Well, George, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing part of your story. Thank you for all you've done for the game and the ripple effects that's had that a lot of people like me and my kids now get to benefit from. So I really appreciate it. And we want to say thank you to all of you for listening to this episode of Touchline Talk by Soccer Perspective. And we'll see you next time.